Sometimes with Disney's Health for the Americas, they can be very outdated and sometimes they're still completely relevant. When it comes to infant care and feeding, I'd say it's a little bit of both. This was originally released in 1945, and over the course of 8 or so minutes, the narrator tells the listener or the viewer about, first of all, how to prepare food for a baby and an infant, and also what a pregnant person should eat. And how best to nourish their own body so that they can also nourish the fetus. That part of it is still very relevant. It focuses mostly on eating fresh foods and, you know, avoiding, too much bad food and basically following a normal, healthy diet. The food for the baby is where it gets a little outdated. There's a quote that I loved, and I didn't write down the quote exactly, unfortunately, but it was something to the effect of, if you cannot keep a cow, then goat's milk will do. I mean, that's good to know, but I also can't keep a goat, so that wouldn't be very helpful. Obviously, the big thing here is that nowadays, if a baby isn't getting breast milk for whatever reason, then they're going to get formula. So this is a big thing that definitely shows how dated that part of it is. But it does provide some, useful tips. If you do have to give the baby milk, make sure you boil it, and their water, make sure it's boiled. So all of those tips are generally good, but not necessarily the best way to do things nowadays. And there are some other tips that are maybe not always relevant to everybody. It looks at putting a mosquito net over a child's crib to obviously keep out mosquitoes. I feel like that's not going to affect too many people, certainly not anybody in the UK. Um, and some various other tips for feeding children that are, again, good advice in certain situations, but not the best advice for today. So watching it as a Disney fan, I found it to be quite delightful because it's cheesy in parts, but also they keep referring to this baby as little number five, which I guess they did so that it was more relatable. By not naming the baby, it means that somebody is more likely to be able to relate to it. But also, it feels kind of degrading to just give the baby a number. So I'm not sure exactly how I feel about that. But the animation quality is very good, very enjoyable. But I also found it to be very educational. Not educational insofar as how best to approach infant feeding today, but educational in the sense that I learned a lot about attitudes at the time and how things have differed. And it's incredible to think that baby formula wasn't always the most common approach, and I found that to be really quite fascinating. Of course, I have to take the tips here with a pinch of salt and assume that this was, the approach, the best approach for feeding infants at the time. But generally speaking, it is quite educational in that regard. Would I recommend it? Absolutely. For Disney fans who like the Health for the Americas series, I'd say that this one's definitely worth checking out. I enjoyed it for the right reasons in terms of it being well animated, well narrated. I'm not sure who narrated it. There's next to no information on IMDb, unfortunately. Um, and I feel like it also packed a lot of information in. Again, not all of the information is as relevant today, but promoting healthy eating during pregnancy, I think, is something that it does really well. And it helps to show the importance of that and how that can positively benefit the baby. So, in all, infant care and feeding is very good, quite dated in parts, but if you're a Disney fan and you like the Health for the Americas series in general, then I'd say it's definitely worth checking out.